So let's go to Jabalia now, Tamara. We're going to go up to the north. This is fighting in the north. So we've gone from the south, Rafah, to the middle area, just north of the middle area in Gaza City. And then now we're in the true north, Jabalia. And Jabalia has been a center of resistance for the Palestinian struggle for generations. This is where the first Intifada began, when the kids on the street reacted to an Israeli military vehicle running over pedestrians, and the children in the neighborhood attacked. And then the attacks didn't stop, and they became the famous First Intifada, which put Palestinians on the map, put Yasser Arafat on Time magazine, had heroic pictures of the women taking off their high heels to participate in the stone throwing. But there's also a strong armed struggle component to this. The armed struggle component that started in the mid 80s was inspired in many ways in Jabalia when fighters broke out of prison. Islamic Jihad fighters broke out of prison in 1986. Some of them went and hid in Jabalia, the others in 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜. And 𝐓𝐡𝐞 and Jabalia are the two places in Gaza that are known for their for haunting the Israelis. And so the IDF Chief of Staff, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜, he visited yesterday in Jabalia, and he said that the ops in Jabalia are designed to kill Hamas fighters, to put pressure on them to give back the Israeli captives. So they're fighting these ground wars. So these ground wars are in Jabalia and the Jabalia refugee camp, which is north of the city of Jabalia. But there's no demarcation line that is perceptible to anybody unless you're from Jabalia, and even still, they don't get too caught up in the differences between the camp and the city. I'll try to note, because the fighters do identify which ones were Jabalia and which ones were Jabalia camp, but really we're talking about a 3-kilometer area that envelops both. So let's look at 21, because we've seen this throughout the war. The Jabalia squadron of the 𝐶𝐏𝐶 Brigade's Air Force. We saw one of these last week. We're seeing another one here, dropping a munition. We'll watch this a couple times too, but you can see it's an open. There's a row of tanks over there to the left. There's an open top Jeep. You see it. It's an open top Jeep that he attempts to hit. It looks like he misses a bit, but it's a shrapnel device. It's a hand grenade. So it still causes damage, and it definitely causes psychological damage to think that you could have a drone fly over you at any moment and drop. And Jabalia did this in the first days of the war. We remember they did it. I showed it not too long ago. I put together a compilation of the way that Palestinians have used drones throughout the war. So they used it on October 7th for the blinding operation that allowed that preceded knocking out all of Israel's communications, command and control. That's called the blinding operation, which allowed the breaching operation to take place because the Israelis didn't have any idea what was going on. They had lost all their command and control. They'd lost their automatic machine guns. And then each time the army comes into Jabalia, the Jabalia Air Force comes up and drops these drone-dropped munitions. We get a closer look at this one if you watch. 𝐶𝐏 seems to be indicating that the soldiers drop. It's not totally clear that that's the case. They might have got it a little closer, but over the course of time, it does look like they got away. Presuming they got away with the footage is a good sign that they got away. And they're dropping 𝐶𝐏 developed hand grenades. I think I talked about this last week when we showed these drone dropped munitions, that this is a program that was started by Adnan al-Ghul as soon as he got back to Gaza in 1994, and he set about building the weapons industry. There's 5 generations of 𝐶𝐏 grenades that have gone from the first Mohammed al-Deif, and Adnan al-Ghul had built one that you needed to light the fuse with a match. So we've gone from that to essentially copies of the principal grenades that the American and Israeli armies use, anti-personnel grenades. But in between, they've made plastic ones, aluminum ones, lead ones, another plastic, and then metal. And now they had 250,000 grenades by the end of the Second Intifada. They set about making the grenades in the late 80s, in the late 90s, in the days before the Second Intifada. By the end of the Second Intifada, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 claims they have 250,000 hand grenades. So just an interesting way to see how the weapons industry has developed, and then how they use those weapons with different applications. Let's look at number 22. This is a 𝐓𝐡𝐞 booby trap of a building. You can see the Merkava tank here, the target building. You can see the soldiers. You're looking from literally across the street at the soldiers. Again, all of these intelligence the intelligence and surveillance is what makes these operations possible. The proximity to the fighters, to the enemy, are just unbelievable. The Israelis believe they're walking in this building safely, and they're being watched from multiple locations, because that's a different angle of that same corner. And you can see that building is blown up, very, very, very significantly blown up. The fighter says, after this explosion, the fighter says, "We swear we will bring you terrible death. Now advance to pick up your pieces, O cowards. We will bring you terrible death. Now advance. Go forward. Go and gather your pieces, O cowards." And this is the IDF saying they're fighting in the heart of Jabalia for the first time ever. The fighter in this video is saying what I just said right now. He's saying, "We will bring you terrible death. Now go ahead and collect your body parts of your cowardly comrades," is what the shorthand of what that fighter says. You can just see it one more time with the proximity. You're watching. There's watching from a second location. And we're going to see here a third location is going to be watched from. So they have positions all around this building. And there's many ways that they could attack this building. They could set up sniper positions and snipe the soldiers. But they believe they have such intelligence on this building that they can actually wire up a device that that does all of it at once, instead of picking them off by soldiers. You can just see the scale of that explosion. Basically vaporizes that car. And he gets away, and fighters return to their bases safely, even though they're right across the street from the Israelis. So after this, let's hop to 23 tomorrow, because this is a Yasin. It's a great quote from that soldier, from that fighter. So you see him pop out into the street here. You see the back of a tank, so he's firing on the back of the tank, the weakest position, where the ammo is. The way that hits looks like possibly an ammo hit. It's definitely a direct hit on the vehicle. You can see parts of the vehicle flying off. And some people have said, we've talked about how I talked last week about how they don't blow up. The tanks don't blow up like a movie. You don't need to see the entire tank blow up to find a kill. You know, a lot of people talk on social media and in the comments trying to say, how effective are these? So I was reading Haaretz the other day, and they had some testimonies, and these testimonies you're going to hear for years to come. These are the first ones that I have found that seem like meaningful testimonies. But we watched this a couple times. I'll just read you this. This is from a soldier. He's an officer in a tank in the armored corps. He's in a tank. And he talks about 3 days later. He lists a bunch of other times where their tanks were hit by RPGs and damage, multiple people injured inside. But this story he tells is pretty straightforward. 3 days later, we were traveling in a convoy, laughing at the tank, communicating with neighboring tanks. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I feel a blast on the side of the tank. I can't even finish my question. What happened? And crazy fires flare up inside. We'd shut the hatches to avoid snipers, and I can't breathe. I feel like I'm swallowing a knife. I can't open my eyes. I feel like a sausage on a grill. I realize that I'm burning and I can't get out. I need to press both fuses at the same time to open the hatch. I know the chance that the left opening will work at this moment isn't high, and that if I have to open the hatch with a manual device, we're all going to die. I try the fuses with my eyes closed, trying, and I can't get it to work. I force my eyes open. I see the fuses there, press harder, and it opens. Just as I get half of my body outside, an ammunition case explodes inside the tank. The whole tank is burning, so I think everyone is dead. I'm in the middle of Khan Yunis. There are terrorists everywhere. The thought that I'd rather be shot or abducted than burn in the tank goes through my mind. I jump out to the ground and the tank suddenly starts moving in my direction. Turns over the driver. It turns out the driver hadn't lost consciousness. He also thought everyone else was dead. He stuck his head out of the top of the opening to hit the gas in order to beat it out of there. I'm lying on the ground. I gather under the tank and the tank drives over me. I roll over so that I'm in between the treads. My fingers are burnt and my flesh is exposed. I'm a guy who faints at a blood test, and now that doesn't affect me. I use my fingers to help me stand up. Everything is hurting. I start to run in the direction of the battalion. I run. Afterward, I was told that the commander who was in the Namur APC behind me saw me running, reported seeing a terrorist, and requested permission to fire at me. The commander denied permission because he said there were more forces and he was afraid of friendly fire. So they didn't Hannibal him because they didn't want to Hannibal the other forces that were there too. So a single Hannibal seemed like it was on the table, but once there was many Hannibals, he didn't want to have crossfire during the Hannibal. I keep running to see the Golani unit. They're aiming their rifles at me, and I'm signaling that I'm a soldier. They finally realize that I am, thanks to my helmet. They start to patch me up. I tell them my crew burned. The next thing I remember, a 20-year-old female paramedic is calmly tending to me and my evaluation with someone lying in my tank, from my tank, lying beside me. I'll cut this short because it's a bit gross, but he's very burnt. I know he's one of the three, but I can't figure out who he is. He's totally black. Even the whites of his eyes are black. One of the crew members is still in intensive care. His lungs were burned so badly. Another buddy's in rehab. Both he and the third buddy currently undergoing a succession of plastic surgery procedures because they were in the fire for a few minutes, where I managed to get out in seconds. So you can talk to any soldier that fought in the American Army, and they'll speak to you openly and honestly about these being death coffins. And the scariest way to die is inside these tanks. And from American infantry point of view, they like to come outside the tanks, in part because the death inside the tanks is so horrible. So that was just one story of what happens when you get hit by a Yasin, when you're otherwise having a good time hanging out with your friends in a tank, committing genocide in Gaza. Let's do 24. This is a Soraya Al-Quds sniper operation using a Steyr 50 cal, an Iranian copy of it, which in its component parts is called an Al-Ghul when Qassam uses it. You can see they have surveillance of every single one of these operations involves surveillance, reconnaissance. I mean, less reconnaissance because they don't move out of the area. So it's surveillance and intelligence, less so than reconnaissance. But you can see the Israeli barrel. See that sticking out the window, sticking out that hole. You'll note when they go to the Soraya sniper, the Palestinian fighter is not out the window. You see how clearly he is not out the window? He is clearly not out the window. You look at the Israeli, he's clearly out the window. These are giveaways, just like hanging curtains are giveaways, just like all of the giveaways that we've been watching of these soldiers in a window now, 8 months on. more than 200 days of ground war, and the dudes are still sitting in their windows getting picked off. 10 a week. There's 10 this week. 10 sniper kills this week in a week that the IDF didn't claim any. So you can see his barrel here. So you can see his barrel sticking out the window. You can't see anything else, but from many, many angles, you can see that barrel sticking out. So compare that to this snipers that we're going to see in the next few videos here. So he gets him. The shot is at least on target in this one. Let's go to 24. We'll let him shoot here. Serious weapon. And you can see it hit in the hole. So even just hitting in that hole, I showed you on a previous episode that it explodes those walls. The cinder block wall is just for cover. It's concealment only. It's not a defensive position. Let's go 24B, yeah, because then they put out this slick poster of their sniper team. They show the Israeli in the window with the triangle, and then they show their fighter. He's wearing a ghillie suit, which is a suit they wear for camouflage, where they put the natural landscape, basically hang it all off of it, and you can see his 𝐄𝐥𝐞 𝐄𝐿 headband there. I previously misidentified this on my Twitter as a 𝐓𝐡𝐞 sniper, but I corrected that. That is a 𝐓𝐿 𝐄𝐿 sniper team, and he is using his Steyr 50 cal Iranian weapon, probably with the similar milled parts that what 𝐓𝐡𝐞 does, because the weapons don't come all intact. They come in pieces. Let's do 25, because here's a 𝐓𝐡𝐞 sniper attack. Same, Jabalia versus soldiers in a window. They'll show up in the window invariably. You can see they've got curtains on the other windows, which are more obvious than not having curtains, obviously. And then we see this Al-Ghul sniper get his range. We're going to see the soldier enter the room here in this building that is a position. The Israelis have the whole building as a position. You can see again the curtains. And then again, go to my Twitter feed if you want to watch the full of these videos, but these are not misses. These are hits, and the survivability rate of a 50 caliber anti-materiel bullet being fired from less than a kilometer and hitting you, your odds are low to zero, very low. And there's one more, 26. This is a pretty remarkable one. Oh, yeah, this is a remarkable one. So he's got them on the roof. 𝐓𝐡𝐞's tracking these guys on the roof. It looks like they're setting up their signals for their base to use this as this Jabalia position as a base. This is east of Jabalia City. So shout out to this Jabalia City battalion rather than the camp battalion in this case, likely. It's not always easy to tell which is which because they overlap so much. And then the operations, if they're pointing in various directions, to say if it was Jabalia or the Jabalia camp it's not it's a distinction without a difference. Is that how you say it? It's the same place. And they drop. And then there's a third one, 27. You can just skip right to it. This one is the one that's pretty remarkable. You watch a soldier here with his binoculars. So he's the scouter. He's going to tell everybody in his unit where everybody is. So he's out here scouting. He's a scouter. And 𝐓𝐡𝐞 also has a scouter. Oh, and there he is, putting him in the crosshairs, scouting. And then they make him red with a triangle. And then you have to use your imagination after that, because we strictly adhere to YouTube community guidelines, and we will continue to do that so that these videos stay up for their educational purposes. We do vet these videos, just to say, editorially vet them. I go through them to confirm what we're seeing is what we're seeing. We go through them and I do an initial edit of them tomorrow comes back over with a double check edit to make sure that we don't have dropping soldiers. And so it's a real team project to make sure that we're editing these videos by journalistic standards. And these videos should be allowed to be played by journalistic standards. The way that we're using them for commentary and reporting is perfectly legitimate. So there's another sniper operation. This is 28. This is 𝐄𝐥𝐿 𝐄𝐿 using a Dragunov, an SVD. It's a smaller round fired from it. Again, look at his dangling out the window with his gun. And you'll watch the opposite happening from the 𝐄𝐥𝐿 𝐄𝐿 fighter. So you wouldn't see him except for that gun dangling out the window. And this fighter says here, he says to the IDF, "We will pick you off one by one until you escape from here running." See, he's back from the window. He's shielded. His gun is not sticking out the window. And he gets the heck out of there after firing. And not clear the result of this one, but that's a pretty small space, and he gets it into that space, as you can see. So that's an SVD, that's a Dragunov rifle that 𝐄𝐥𝐿 𝐄𝐿 uses. We'll skip to number 30 here because this is an ambush that's really interesting that the 𝐄𝐥𝐿 𝐄𝐿 has set up here. We see a battalion of tanks parked side by side. We see the RPG-7 with the anti-armor warhead. And now we're seeing a small arms fire from an AK-47. And there's some talk that if you spray these tanks active protection systems with gunfire, that you could trigger it prematurely. And so we've seen fighters do that a few times with the less capable anti-armor rocket, the single. That's, you could see it's not a tandem charge rocket, so it only penetrates about 250 millimeters, whereas the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 can be up to 600 millimeters in a lot of circumstances, and the 𝐓𝐿 EFP that we saw can push 700 millimeters of damage. So you can see the way they use those together. We'll go to 31 here because Qassam is using the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 in the streets. They're really showing this part of Jabalia off. If you're going to actually fight in Jabalia, you're fighting guys who know what they're doing, know where they live, know where to get the choke points. The destruction in the neighborhood forces tanks in certain directions that are predictable. And this fighter comes out of an alley and is facing straight on with an armored troop carrier. And again, with that distance, below 50 meters, you have a 100% accuracy rate from that. So we can watch him here. This is something that Qassam doesn't do as much. We always point out how the 𝐄𝐥𝐿 𝐄𝐿 videos take you on a bit of a longer walk. This is Qassam showing us the longer walk, in part, I think, showing the way the alleys are used in this battle. That makes it impossible for the Israelis to move. You can see even just how difficult it is for that tank to move through that space. They destroy their tracks if they go up on that rebar and concrete. They don't just plow over that. You see the plowing over cars. They drive over flattened cars. That's easier to do, but that broken stone, cinder block, and rebar destroys the track on the tank. And then if the tank track is destroyed, then the tank is just sitting there like a sitting duck, and the resistance can move in around it. We'll let this play out one last time for you, because you could see the way he uses the rubble to fire around the rubble. So even if you're watching from that tank, you won't see him. And more importantly for him, the active protection system the radar can't find you out of that rubble. So that was an interesting one. Let's go to 32 here, because there's two operations here where 𝐄𝐥𝐿 𝐄𝐿 are just owning the Jabalia camp. Watch them operate here. This is their neighborhood. They're sending their fighters. He's giving signals to their to each other. They have clear hand signals that we've seen them use throughout the war. We're seeing the unit. This is what the Israelis would call combined arms, because they're using various different weapons. The Israelis call it combined arms when they use tanks with helicopters, with fighter jets. For 𝐄𝐤 𝐄𝐿, it's a combined arms operation when they use RPGs, IEDs, small arms, rifle grenades. And so you can see the D9 bulldozer. The bulldozer presumably had to come in to clear the way for the tank for the reason that I just said. They can't drive over the rebar and concrete. So these D9 bulldozers have to come in and actually clear the way for the tanks to move through the town, through the refugee camp. So just wanton destruction there. There's absolutely no reason to destroy that cell phone shop that we're looking at right there. But that D9 got it. That D9 got it pretty good in that operation, as you can see. And then we'll go to 32B from here because you can watch them do the same. This is interesting because this is what the American military calls a stack. So this is a 𝐓𝐤 𝐄𝐿 stack operating here along that wall there, and they're again combined arms. Here's an RPG-7 with this guy with a hat, and he's going to come around the corner with his RPG-7. But basically, we're seeing 𝐓𝐤 fighters stalking the camp. Now we see 3 of them moving down the alley. We see gunmen moving down the alley. They're finding their place. This is them popping either a mouse hole or a loophole to fire through, a mouse hole to walk through, a loophole to fire through. These guys are wiring. You can see that's an explosively formed penetrator aimed at the road. This guy's firing. That guy there is firing. He's firing a rifle grenade. So he puts a grenade on the top of his rifle and fires it. That's the first I think we've seen of that in this war. Although 𝐶ASSAM and 𝐓𝐤 have made those rifle grenades since the 90s. But yeah, just fighting in the alleys. I think there's just footage that's great to show of them. It's sort of old school fighting in the alleys. Anyone fighting in these camps becomes terrified of these camps, and that's why they continually go back. When they go back, if you saw the footage of Jenin yesterday with the column, the amount of armored vehicles they sent into the Jenin camp, it's because they're afraid of fighting in the camps, and they need to outnumber the fighters by hundreds to one. Let's do number 33 tomorrow. We have a Yasin strike here against an armored engineering vehicle. And this vehicle is an older vehicle, and this shooter is going to target it right in the middle where the crew cabin is. So that's where the crew cabin of that, and we're seeing the tank there burning. Let's go to 34. This is a tunnel ambush. This is again, these are all happened in the last week, guys. And I cut a lot of them. And I'm not showing you any mortars or rockets. So there's many other operations that are happening too. So these fighters are planning a complex ambush here. Out the tunnel, first fighter, lying on his back, 2 fighters, one with a Yasin, the other with a Yasin. One guy has a PK machine gun, and he sees what looks like a Merkava from behind. So he's going to fire from behind, again, the weak spot. The first guy is going to fire on that tank. The next guy is going to come up in the tunnel and bring machine guns. And he's going to bring machine guns and carry out. We had to take the audio out of them, but this guy's going to spray his machine gun. Again, like we're now 20 or 30 seconds after the tank was hit. So if they're coming out to rescue their guys, they're now, so you can see that those are cartridges from the machine gun spraying all over. So he's spraying against those troops who have come out to see they're out to protect, to help that disabled engineering troop carrier. And then they go back down into the tunnel and they're talking to each other. They say, wait 3 minutes. The fighter says, detonate the offensive escape tunnel in 3 minutes as they return to their base. So as they're jumping down this tunnel, he says, wait 3 minutes before setting off the IED. And then he sets off the IED, and the IED explodes. And waiting for 3 minutes is devastating because the Israelis believe that they've gone down in the tunnel for 3 to 5 minutes, the fighter says. Wait 3 to 5 minutes, and then that's when the Israelis would feel safe. They come out from behind their tanks. They start their rescue operation, and then they're hit by the IED. So that's another detailed and interesting operation. I'm going to show you 35 and 36 here back to back. Just show them once each tomorrow. This is an Apache helicopter seen in the sky, and we're going to see the SA-7s, the surface-to-air missiles. They're called man pads, man portable air defense systems. Shoulder-fired rockets. You can watch him put it together here. He's putting the battery. That battery is what retrofitted these old weapons that were looted from Gaddafi's stocks when NATO overthrew Gaddafi. Gaddafi had a whole stock of these, but the batteries didn't work. And so essentially, as I've described before on this show, they were effectively only as good as a club to hit someone over the head with. But with 𝐤𝐿 reanimating the batteries, they made them able to fire on helicopters. Now, let's be honest about these. These advanced attack helicopters have flares, 160 on some of them. And the flares throw off. The flares note the optical release. So the helicopter notes that someone put an optical sight on their helicopter, and they'll release flares, and the flares will throw these old devices off, and they won't hit them. So 𝐤𝐿 is not going to down a Apache helicopter with one of these SA-7s. But what it is, it's interesting to note, because that weapon could be used against the medical evacuation helicopters that fly low, that are big, and that they don't have flares in the same way as the attack helicopters do. And just from a statistical point of view, attack helicopters carry out about 15% of Israel's aerial war are carried out by attack helicopters. So they play a significant role. I mean, I think that if you want to get in the weeds on the man pads, you could take many man pads, like dozens, and fire them all at once at one target, and that might work. It might overpower the flare system, but really that weapon is not going to be very effective. That's an old weapon. Without serious upgrades, that weapon isn't going to be effective against an Apache. But it proves that 𝐤𝐿 is not, and none of the fighters are targeting, because Suraya Al-Quds has some too. They're not targeting the medevacs, and we've been saying that all war. Number 37 here tomorrow is another 2 Yasin strikes versus armored vehicles from a few feet away, way too close for the active protection system to work, hitting the front of the tank there where the engine block is. So maybe disabling the engine block on that one. Tough to see what that one was. I could only be confident enough to call it an armored vehicle. It looked like it might have been a D9. But it's tough to tell through that tiny door. But the reason why it's tough to tell is also the reason why it can't be defended against. The radar can't pick up that shot. We could just watch it that one time, because 38, these are the next two are going to get looped a few times. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on these, because these last two operations from the last couple days in Jabalia are remarkable operations for their courage and for their efficacy. So let's go to 38 here tomorrow. So these fighters, this is a Suraya Al-Quds and 𝐤𝐿 joint operation. So we saw the beginning, the Yasin 105 be fired out from over top. Look at the tank is right there. They're right over top of the tank. This is a Yasin 105 fired down on the turret where the tank commander, where the weaponry is, and then the Suraya fighter comes with the RPG-7, which doesn't have as damaging as depth, doesn't go as deep into the armor. But if you hit the same tank in the similar spot, you've already weakened the armor, which is what the implication of what this operation is here. And the fighters get away, but we just watch it one more time just to see how close these guys are, and also the military vandalism. Look at the unnecessary vandalism of these people's houses to just have a hole in the front wall like this. But our fighters are skillfully moving into that spot and firing, and then the second fighter, he comes in with the lesser weapon and fires. So they're picking the weapons that are appropriate for the combination and firing on that tank. And if we go to 39, this is from the same video. It makes it seem like it's downstairs, but I don't think it is. But these two guys, are going to argue about who gets to run out and place the guerrilla action device on the tank. So it's been said that the dialogue sounds like when you're who gets to pay for the shawarma with your Palestinian buddies, and they're saying, no, it's mine, no, let me do it, let me take it. So that's a devastating operation. So the one guy's carrying it here, right? He's carrying it. Look at he guards it. The other guy comes up to him and says, no, you got to give it to me. And he says, Habibi, no, it's mine. For God's sakes, let me do it. I beg you, let me keep it. And then this guy takes it. And watch when he comes out the door and looks left. Watch when he looks left. Tank column. He runs. He doesn't care. He sticks it in the most vulnerable part of the tank, pulls out the pin, runs back, and gets his helmet cam blown off here. That's what we're seeing here. His helmet cam gets blown off, but he returns to his base safely. Let's watch this one more time. It's legendary. These two guys are legendary. They're arguing over who gets to run up across a tank that's staring at you and attach by hand a device, a guerrilla action device, as it's called. So you can see it. Magnetic sticks, pulls the pin out, and then watch this. Bang. Those devices are devastating. There's a lot of testimonials from October 7th about how that device was what destroyed the tanks on October 7th.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.